What's up and welcome in. It's the DePaul Hoops podcast with the great Andy Thompson. I am Nick Palazzolo, bringing you another episode here on the Big East Energy Network as DePaul played a heartbreaker on Friday night in the South Loop as they lose by a pair of free throws to Nick Martinelli and Northwestern. We'll talk about the takeaways we had in that game. We will preview Gardner-Webb, and we will also talk about the DePaul women's basketball team, who also just played Northwestern. All of that and more is coming up next.
McAdoo look to his shot.
Spins, fade away. Yes, sir. Chandler hits the three.
Oh, touchdown. Giving it up to Reed.
It was a game that was as back and forth as we have ever seen. And as Chris Holtman said, Andy, it was just a great college basketball game on Friday night against Northwestern. DePaul couldn't pull it out because of a foul, a no foul, phantom foul, whatever you want to call it. But let's go ahead and start here about the Northwestern game, Andy. And let's go ahead and start with, this seems really weird to say, and we were talking about it a little bit just a couple minutes ago. This is the most complete game that we've seen DePaul play, which really seems weird to say, given the result and kind of how it happened. But I think that's probably the most true statement.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying to you off air, Northwestern's down 44-42 at the half. And, you look at, a team put up 42 points on you on 16 of 24 shooting from the field. And yet you and I both feel, in a weird way, that was probably the most complete defensive half they played, because for the most part, obviously there's going to be some lapses here and there, but they were staying ahead of their guys. They were forcing turnovers. They weren't, getting blown by at the rim. It was Northwestern was making a fair share of tough shots. And I thought it was impressive that the team, like Chris Holtman likes to have them say, they didn't flinch. They stayed composed. They were also able to make some tough shots. They got to the free throw line. And man, Paul Zelk ensured that both teams got to the free throw line quite a bit. That man loves to blow his whistle. But I was impressed by the team's composure, especially, coming off a game against Buffalo. But I think both of us, the staff, the team, everybody like to forget. I thought they came out like you predicted they would. They came out pissed off. They came out angry, came out aggressive, and they showed that when this team is able to play a full 40 minutes offensively, but also defensively, they're going to be a tough out for a vast majority of power conference teams.
Yeah, and I think that game against Northwestern was a fascinating culmination of a lot of things. It's like exactly what I thought. I thought DePaul was going to come out fast just because, again, just nobody felt good about how the previous game against Buffalo went. Like, nobody. There was nothing good about that game. You only scored 53 points. You blew a lead. Like, it's just one of those things where, if you're DePaul, you just can't, or they didn't blow a lead in that game. I'm thinking about Stonehill. But it's just one of those games where it shouldn't have even come to that if you're DePaul. And now you go to this Northwestern game, everybody came out pissed off. Holtman did what he said he was going to do. He's going to trim down the rotations. 21 minutes out of Kruz McClure, 16 minutes out of Fabián Flores. And that, I think, was probably the most notable thing that we can get into. But I was also just really impressed just offensively of the level of physicality, because against Buffalo, it was gone. Like, I think Holtman knew it, and Holtman mentioned post-game, up really early, like just looking at film, because it was almost like one of those things is like, how is this possible? And so just a lot of film review there. But where do you want to start within the game? Do you want to start with Kruz and Fabian? Is that where we want to go?
I think I do, kind of just because, I remember you and I at the end of the last show, we kind of talked about, okay, who do we think is the X factor going to be for this game. And I kind of said, I was kind of torn between two, because part of me thought, okay, Teo being a legitimate, stretch four is going to be able to pull people away from pull defenders away from the basket, get Arrington Page out of the lane maybe a little bit more, and just be able to kind of provide an interior presence on the glass, but also a presence in the perimeter. He didn't have his biggest game in that one. He did have a career high 4 assists, but he only had, in 18 minutes, he had 3 points and 3 rebounds, and all 3 of those points were the free throw line. So, a solid outing for him, who, again, like Chris Holtmann said today in media availability, he was, kind of been the most pleasant surprise, where when he's able to give you a spark, that's a lot more than you expected from him. I think all of us would agree. But where I do want to focus on that game is, I think, you and I had both been saying the past few weeks that, we think one of the biggest keys for this team was how quickly can we get Kruz McClure adjusted to the backup point guard role. Because it's quite obvious that this offense flows better when you have your best shooters like Brandon Macklin and like RJ Smith. Brandon Macklin, by the way, 44.4% from 3 on the season. That is not where I would have thought he would have been. If you would have asked me who would be one of our best shooters, I would not have said, no discredit to him, but I would not have said he'd be near the top the way he is, which is only a credit to him. But anyway, you want to free up shooters like Macklin, like Teo, like RJ, and the best way to do that is to have RJ off ball. Well, Kruz, according to Evan Miyakawa's website, we talked about how he hadn't played, many possessions. He was only in the 40s. Well, now he's at 85. Yeah. And even with being at 85 possessions, DePaul's offense per 100 is 25.9 points per 100 possessions better. So he's almost gotten to the full 100 he needs, and he is still far and away our most impactful offensive player. But I think the big one for me, and I don't think any of us saw him playing 16 minutes in that game before the game started, was Fabian, who had 8 rebounds, a team high, 6 points, and an assist. Our defense, even though he's only played 32 possessions, so once again, there's going to be some regression to the mean due there. But our defense with Fabian in is 22.3 points per 100 possessions better, which underscores the fact that he's not going to be a major shot blocker. We know that. But the amount of shots he's going to alter and the amount of drives into the lane that he's going to prevent just with his height, 7'2", and, Layden Blocker went on record, he could be taller. I wouldn't be opposed to hearing that, but the measurement says 7'2".
He is every bit of 7'2", but yes. when I like watch him during pregame shoot around, I just look. I was like, that might be a little bit more than 7'2".
Yeah, he looks all of 7'2" until you see him next to Kaman and Isaiah, who are both 7'0", 7'1" themselves, and you look at it and it's like he is more than an inch taller than those guys. Like, it could be, like Layden said, it could be 7'4". Regardless of his height, though, he is going to be a major presence in the paint for this team. And I think the big key for him is just like Holtmann, kind of mentioned about a month ago and also today in media availability, is his conditioning is really going to be the factor for what keeps him on the floor in long spurts, because he had kind of mentioned that, there was a point towards the end of that game where he was a little bit fatigued. But, regardless of that, he's able to come in, be productive right away. He was efficient around the rim. He was 2 of 3, and then he also was perfect at the free throw line on 2 shots. So he's coming in and making, I think you and I both agree, significantly more contributions than we expected, right from the jump. And the fact that he's able to fairly seamlessly not only adjust to Holtmann's system, but also to American basketball. Like, it's a refreshing sign for this team as they,
except for that offensive interference. Because still playing by the FIBA rules there.
Yeah, when you've got to be talking to, it was funny. I don't know if you caught it. He was talking to Arrington Page instead of the referees on the other side of the floor, just innocently asking him, like, what did I do wrong there? And it was a funny exchange to watch, where it's like, he's used to playing FIBA, and he didn't know that in America that's a basket interference. But regardless of that, which was honestly an amusing little side plot of the game, I was impressed with how quickly he was able to come in and impact things. And what did you really see from him that you think he can build on?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Holtmann mentioned today that one of the things with Fabian is that he's like, we knew he was a smart player coming in, like, but Holtmann said we weren't really sure how smart until he really got into the building. And I think that him being really, really smart really helps him, because, you could recruit international players with talent, but if they're not smart, you can't use the talent, because then they're just going to make dumb mistakes. But if you are a guy like Fabian, and you're really smart, 7'2", probably taller, but just the way he can, at times, I think he looks lost. I think that's just the reality. Just because at times he's taking in all this brand new information in a league he's never played in before, or a league he's never played in before. And so there's going to be that learning curve. But what was more impressive to me, and I realized it in the game, but then the next day I watched the TV copy, and my biggest takeaway from Fabian is being 7'2" with that wingspan, he was just really kind of redirecting and making the Wildcats rethink about how they went about passing lanes and shot selection and stuff, because he's just such a physical presence, just a specimen of a human, to the point where it's again, this is not a knock on NJ Benson, but Fabián Flores can cover a lot more ground than NJ Benson can at 6'8". And Benson is still a very physical player, don't get me wrong, but just the sheer wingspan and the height mixed with just about everything really can cause a problem for opposing offenses, and that's something I really noticed.
The thing for me too is again, you always with these 7-footers, and obviously this team, even though only one of them has played, more than 20 minutes on a season, and that would be just narrowly, that would be Fabian, just barely. You always wonder with these 7-footers, how are they going to be able to move? Are they going to be are they going to look like they're plodding around out there? Are they going to look like Ryan Kalkbrenner, where by the end of his career, you had, Greg McDermott calling him a gazelle? I don't quite think Fabian's where Kalkbrenner was, but he is significantly more mobile.
But he could be.
He's got 3 years. But especially, given that it was his first game and getting used to things, playing in America, he was way more mobile than I expected him to be. And I think that's also a credit to, the work he's put in here, even just in his limited time. I was impressed with that.
Yeah, and it was just a really impactful minutes. I think what I also found interesting, that Fabian is not going to be playing on the same floor with NJ. Holtman said he doesn't anticipate doing that, which is interesting because you want Fabian to play, because Holtman mentioned after the Northwestern game, good players don't get better by sitting. But then NJ is one of your most impactful players. So how many minutes can you really do or give him? That's just, again, this is just, the math problem they have to solve and figure out. But just kind of as Holtman said that, I understand not wanting to do it, but it just kind of makes me think, how many more minutes can he get? Because there seems like there's going to be a natural cap on that at some point, because you're going to want NJ to play. And maybe I'm just overthinking it and looking too much into it, and you can tell me if you think that. But, it's just one of those weird things where it's I understand you're not going to play him with NJ, but you want him to play. But, where's the minutes going to... how many more minutes can he play? And I think that's the same thing with Kaman, too, because you mentioned Kaman as somebody who needs to play. I'm not really sure where his minutes are going to come from.
It's weird. In the preseason, you and I are both thinking, well, okay, obviously, we didn't know until late preseason, A, that Fabian was even to be coming here, and B, that Correct. He was going to be eligible, which we found out, I think, about 2 weeks ago now. Maybe not even.
Yeah.
I think now, like you said, the question is we're looking at Kaman, a guy who has, had multiple games of 2 blocks already, and he hasn't even played 10 minutes in any of those games. He's been super impactful himself. There's just, this front court is so deep that, we started the season wondering about a totally different player like Teo, who now his minutes are actually, I think he pairs where I was going to go with that. I think he pairs the best with Fabian because,
and I mean, Teo led the Blue Demons in assists.
Yeah, 4 assists.
Which is something I was I had to look at that. I was wait, really?
No, I think the thing for me with Teo is what I've been hearing about Fabian all offseason, or at least, the 2 or so months we'd had him prior to him, playing and being eligible, is that you want to have him with a playmaking 4 on the floor. And obviously, we saw, Fabian making some passes at the top of the key that weren't, super, super flashy, but he was, he was getting the job done swinging the ball. But, it's helpful to play him with a playmaking 4, because then he's able to just kind of get to his spots, make those advanced paint reads. Because like Holtman said, and like we've been hearing in the offseason, he's really smart, especially given that, he's the equivalent of a college sophomore and will have 2 years of eligibility after this one's over. But I just think putting him with a playmaking 4 like Teo or even like Jeremy, who Jeremy's kind of a hybrid 4-5. And by the way, real quick, Jeremy, 3 crucial offensive rebounds that kept DePaul alive late in that first half. I want to give a big shout out to him because, obviously his minutes had kind of been, as the front court has been growing a little bit here, where you've got Caleb Bank asserting himself a bit more. You've got Fabian playing now. Jeremy played only 7 minutes and 10 seconds, but he had some of the most impactful minutes on the team just with the possessions he rescued and with the new ones he created just getting on the glass. But, I think a guy like Jeremy or Teo, just somebody who can swing the ball a little bit more and run a little bit more of the offense and just get the ball to him inside is going to be a lot more valuable than NJ, who, NJ's got a little bit of range. He's got some ability to move the ball himself, but I just think that putting 2 guys who tend to be more in the prototypical 5, I'm not sure how well that works for Fabian, because then he'll kind of just be clogging the paint for a guy like NJ, who's, broadly similar just in terms of where he's generally going to be stationed on the court.
Yeah, and I think it's just kind of a work in progress for Holtman, as he said. Like, I know that's, it's not what fans want to hear. It's a very coach speaky answer. Like, that's just not what everybody wants to feel. But I think at another point that, you mentioned, we didn't go into this thinking we had too many front court options.
We do.
And now,
at this point, I would say we do, which is never a bad thing.
Well, that's what I'm going to say. Like, this is a great problem to have because I think last year, right? Last year's DePaul team, year 1 under Chris Holtman, they had games where they just weren't physical. They weren't tall enough. Like, there were bad matchups. Like, they didn't have anybody who could guard Ryan Kalkbrenner. Like, they didn't have a guy. They did
Butler
the best
on the wing. Butler on the wing. Don't forget that. I mean, that was just terrible matchup.
Like, they just, again, it's just like one of those things where it's like the cards were kind of already stacked against you. And now this year, again, good problem to have, creates a new set of problems just by the inventory that you have on your roster. But I think it's just really interesting kind of how the next month or so goes, heading into the St. John's game at Carnesecca, before coming home to play UConn as your first 2 Big East tests, and boy, are those tests. But I just really think it's fascinating how, there's only 40 minutes to go around. So it'll be really interesting to see how this kind of balances out going forward.
No, yeah, for sure. Because like you look at the box score right here, and we've got Teo playing 18 minutes, NJ playing 19, still playing hurt, by the way. Should be about. It's not like we're being told about 2 or so weeks he'll be 100% again. So you got NJ 19 with a bit of a minutes restriction, but not quite. You've got Fabian playing 16. You've got Caleb playing 20. You've got Jeremy playing 7. And with that, we've already got 5 guys splitting minutes. Kaman played 0. And Kaman's a guy that Holtman, like you said today, real quick, not to spend too much time on it, he wants to get Kaman playing as well. And so I just wonder, like, are you going to cut into Caleb's minutes even though he's been playing better? Are you going to give NJ even less runs who can heal himself up? Are you going to give Teo less minutes because obviously he's been starting now and now Caleb's playing better? Are you going to, basically relegate Jeremy mostly to the bench? He played 7 minutes. Like, I don't know what Holtman's going to do, but it'll be fascinating to watch those puzzle pieces fit together. But
hold on. I don't think Holtman knows what he wants to do. I think this is just kind of like a trial by fire type of thing. They're just going to take it game to game and figure it out, essentially, because I just don't think that there is a lot of great options. And I think, well, there are a lot of great options. But
yeah, careful there.
But in terms of how to kind of fit them into the schedule, like it's at some point it feels like square peg and round hole, because you want to do all these things, but just the reaction to it, and the response that by doing one thing you also inadvertently do the other thing, like that's just the fascinating part about this, because again, Fabian, NJ, Kaman, Lorenz, Banks, Teo. That's 5 guys. 5
6.
guys for.
Can you count?
NJ, Teo, Fabian, Kaman, Banks, Jeremy, Lorenz. 6. Oh my God. Finger math. Holy sh. Oh boy. All right, it's been a long day, Andy. All right, you were saying about Kruz McClure. You were saying about Kruz.
Yeah, so you kind of stole my segue there a little bit, but you were going to say, like, speaking of, square peg and round hole, I think you and I had both been looking at the backup point guard spot a little bit as, like, trying to do something that doesn't necessarily work that well. And, the coaching staff, the hand they were dealt in the preseason was Kruz McClure had a lower body injury. So he wasn't able to work himself into the rotation as early as they would have wanted. And we saw kind of where that can clog up the offense a bit because the ball isn't moving. And when it is, it's oftentimes not moving to your best shooters. Well, I think they finally fit that round peg into that round hole when they were able to give Kruz 20 very impactful minutes. Led the team in scoring, drew 7 fouls, and completed 8 of those 10 free throws. Team high 7 fouls drawn, by the way. 2 assists, 2 turnovers. He did have a block, which is very nice, and he was 3 of 6 from the floor, 1 of 2 from 3. The fact that he was able to go from basically not having played any significant stretches of time, where now he's able to play over half of the game, not be in significant foul trouble. He's able to play through a lot of his mistakes and get better off those, and he's able to impact obviously, the final score was 2 points in favor of Northwestern, but he was able to make winning play after winning play that, got DePaul right there in the second half. I was really impressed with him, and I think the sky's the limit for what he can do in that backup spot. And, I'll go on the record and say it right now. I believe by the end of this season, he'll be starting. I think he's got that high of a ceiling.
Correct. And I think that, again, you just listed off the analytics and stuff. But I just think the eye test, like to the simple team, like Kruz makes this team better when he's on the floor. Like he impacts winning. Again, Holtman admitted it today. Like not so much on the defensive side. Again, he's a freshman. There's still a lot of growing pains there. But on the offensive side, like this offense just moves, and it just is so much better with Kruz on the floor. And I think that is fascinating, just given everything that we were talking about. Because it's like, I remember talking about in our first episode, what's really going to happen at that second guard spot? Like, is it going to be RJ? Is it going to be Macklin? Could it be Ilya? And Kruz is the one guy where it's like, there's a high ceiling, but there's also, we don't know what, is happening. Like how that's gonna go. Like we don't know, what to expect right away. Expectations can do a lot of good, but they can also do a little bit of harm as well. But I just think the eye test, regardless of what the analytics say, and you understand them a hell of a lot more than I do. The analytics say that, or the eye test says, sorry, I lost my train of thought midway through.
First,
the eye test says
losing your train of thought. Do we need to restart? No,
yeah,
geez, you do that?
It's been a day.
Happy Monday.
But yeah, but the eye test tells you that Kruz just makes this team better. And I think at some point I agree that he will be starting because, like I said, analytics and the eye test both on your side. Again, if he wants more run, he's got to clean up the defensive side of the ball. But I was really impressed with the 21 minutes. And I mean, I think he attempted 4 free throws in the clutch, or in the clutch late in the second half, kind of at the end of that Northwestern game. And those were some very, like, he had was it him who had the and one?
Yes.
At the end with like a minute to go or something like that. Again, that's not easy for a freshman to do in that environment that we saw Wednesday night.
No, and I think speaking of that and one in the clutch, there were several guys who were trying to, make similar plays to that. And I think the one thing that you and I kind of both came away from that we talked about the second we got into that media room, having our usual little conversation before coach and the players come in, I think the one thing offensively you do really want to see this team get better at, and the free throws we can talk about for a second, because frankly, for the first time all year, they were excellent. But we'll talk about the rim finishing real quick because, I believe the stat was, you might have had it, it was 9 of 21.
9 of 21.
9 of 21 on layups. And that, in Big East play, when you're playing a team like UConn or a team like St. John's, that's not going to get it done. In this game, because Northwestern, their defense is tough, but then once you get to the rim, there's not much stoppage there. There's Arrington Page, and that's about it. This team isn't front court heavy. Their guards are such ball hawks that once you get past them, there's not going to be as much resistance. But I think one thing that you and I both kind of would like to see this team do a little bit more. I'm not looking for highlight play after highlight play, but I do think there are times when, especially the guys like Teo and Caleb, you'd like to see them go up and try to get dunks a little bit more, because you'll note about half the time when NJ gets fouled, whether or not he makes the free throws, he's going up for a dunk because he knows that's an easy way to draw contact. Because somebody's going to have to meet him at the rim, and oftentimes when they do, the ball's getting in there anyway. It's a question of, are you going to try to stop me or not? And when you see guys like Teo and Caleb who drive aggressively into the lane, but then they kind of just go up towards the rim and they're trying to do some sort of like finger roll, or maybe it has a chance to get blocked, or, they're just not getting the best angle on the ball. When you go up there and dunk, if a guy wants to stop you, he's going to have to meet you at the rim. He's going to have to meet you with some contact. And I think the one thing that you and I really want to see tighten up offensively, and I'm sure the staff does as well, to be clear, is just a little bit more, just force and intensity at the rim. Because, the team shot 27 free throws and they made 22 of them. And that's even a technicality there, because 2 of those free throws were, the 2 of those missed free throws became offensive rebounds that became another pair of free throws. So in my mind, this team was 22 of 25 from the line because 2 of those missed free throws were converted into other attempts. That's how I look at it. So this team, in my opinion, only missed 3 free throws by all intents and purposes. So that's great. But in order to generate even more of those attempts, if a team's going to be able to shoot this well from the line, which again, this could be a one-off. I hope it's not, but it could be, given how the season's gone. But to generate even more of those attempts, because you said there were 6 attempts in the last 9:30. Is that correct?
Say that one more time.
You said there were 6 free throw attempts in the last 9 minutes, 30 seconds. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep. Because they had 20 in the first half, 27 total. They had 7 in the second half, and the one was Blocker's 4-point play.
Yeah, to open the half. Yes,
with like 2 minutes into the second half. Yeah,
so I think, again, you got multiple Northwestern guys in foul trouble. You've got key ones, like you've got Singleton, you've got some other guards, you've got Aronson Page even with 4 fouls, and you just with 4.5 minutes to go, I think you would have liked to see some of those late layup attempts, just with a little bit more force going up to the rim. I don't know, just one thing that I kind of noticed is if there's one thing I think, big picture of a team could tighten up offensively, it's that. But overall, like I said, the free throw shooting was good in this game, I thought. Really good, actually, given how it's gone. 7 of 21 from the free throw line. If you can make a 30 or threes, that'll oftentimes, get it done sometimes. But, I just think the biggest thing from this game is you saw a complete offensive game. There were obviously 1 or 2 little things that you want to see improvement on, but for the most part, I was impressed with how the offense came out, especially after, they had 18 points in the first half against Buffalo, who, they are up to 250 on KenPom for what it's worth, but that isn't a defense. Even with that defense still has not cleared the 300. So that is still a bottom 70 defense in the country that you allowed to hold you to 18 points in one half. And so I think to go from getting bogged down like that in the game prior to then coming out against a top 50 defense and putting up 80 points, including 44 in the first half on fairly decent efficiency, 58% from the field, 42% from the field, but really good from the free throw line. I was reading Northwestern's at the top. I just think that, this team, the offense is coming along. And like Chris Holtman said, the defensive identity is going to be what this team has to have. And once the offense kind of meets that same intensity the defense has, this is going to be the most complete DePaul team there's been in many years.
Yeah, and I think offensively it's interesting because the offense from last year to this year just looks a lot different. Last year, again, whether you'd like this philosophy or not, they're living and dying by the 3. They had an interior presence, like, don't get me wrong, but they still had but their focus was at the perimeter at shooting threes. And this year, shooting threes are there. They're taking threes. They're not efficiently making threes. But there's been a lot more of an emphasis on the interior offense. And I think you and I both know, and Holtman has admitted as such, that, well, half-court offense is just the most, horrendous thing in the world. Like, it is. The half-court offense has been really bad the last couple of games. Better against Northwestern, but still not great. But I just think defensively they have to carry it. But I think more than anything, defensively, they need to turn their defense into offense. Because I think at times their defense isn't necessarily turning into the momentum swings. It's more of a bucket for bucket type of thing. Or they don't get the rebound, and they just spend a lot of time more on the defensive side because they couldn't secure the rebound. There's a couple ones late against Buffalo, right? There's a couple against Northwestern, even though DePaul rebounded Northwestern, but still a couple of those. And it's just like one of those things where it's like, I would just love to see the defense translate into more offense. And that's something we haven't seen. Like, it's been more of the trading of buckets, so to speak.
I think kind of to wrap up Northwestern, I think the thing I was most excited about from this game, if I'm honest, looking at the box score, is Northwestern's a top 50 defense and probably one of the best units we'll face all year. And in that game, you grabbed 16 offensive boards, they grabbed 6. So you were really being intentional about rebounding after, Chris Holtmann pretty publicly went after several of his guys, including Caleb, Teo, just guys like challenging them to get on the boards. They answered the call in this game, I would say. And that's something that I'm, kind of moving into Gardner Webb now for a couple minutes, and you can kind of lead off with a story you published about an hour ago. I just think that where Gardner Webb has a couple of guys who are averaging 7 boards a game, on their team, you're going to need to bring that same level of physicality on the glass, because if Gardner Webb is going to have a chance to keep this game within shouting distance, it's going to come from excellent rebounding on their part and maybe a lackluster night there on our part. So just, let's start by, talking about the story you just wrote about, one Chris Holtmann and what he did in 2012, but then talk about Gardner Webb for a couple minutes after.
Yeah, it was fascinating. So I remember looking at the game notes for this game. It was like, I knew I wanted to do a story about Holtmann and Gardner Webb because, again, that's where his first head coaching job. But as I started to dig into it a little bit more on Sunday during the Bears game, because I was like, I just need to start writing. Like, I haven't written anything in a while. I just need to start. And I was like, wait, Holtmann played DePaul at All-State, and he won. Like, that was the first major win in year 3 under Holtmann, which got him, the assistant coaching job at Butler, and then he took over at Butler. Once, oh God, their head coach is escaping me, but I had to step away
Brad
from medical.
Stevens.
No, the guy after.
Oh, never mind. You're talking about who left? I'm forgetting the name.
It's in my story. Hold on. It's in my story. God,
I know I have my moment. You can't count. I can't remember Butler head coaches.
Yeah. Oh God, what is that guy's name? Oh, I can picture him. Oh my God. Where is it? Brandon Miller. There it is. Brandon Miller.
Yep. Tip of my tongue.
So we went to be an assistant under Brandon Miller, and that DePaul game was really the kind of win that put him on the map. And the fascinating part of it, which I didn't know until kind of looking at Gardner Webb's box scores, I was like, wait a second. I was like, they played like the night before at home in Boiling Springs, North Carolina. And I'm looking at this. I was like, I'm looking at Gardner's Webb's box score as I'm trying to figure out where I want to go with this piece on Sunday. And I'm looking at it. I was like, that has to be a typo. I was like, there's no way a Division I college basketball program is playing a back-to-back, let alone a home and then a road. Like, it's not like it's
that's like some WNBA type scheduling right there.
Yeah, exactly. And the more I digged into it, so I asked Holtmann about it today, because until yesterday or 2 days ago, I didn't know. I didn't know they played a back-to-back. And I dug into it, and he was like, yeah, again, small school, you play these bye games because your AD tells you have to play these bye games because you're trying to generate revenue for your school. Because, again, that, $80, $90, $100,000, $50,000, whatever, the bye game contract was for, was, you can't kind of generate that in a fundraiser at a smaller school. And I just thought it was fascinating that Holtmann was really reflective on his time at Gardner Webb, to the point where it's like you can tell like a part of him is still at Gardner Webb, because again, that area just means a lot to him, because again, their former AD Chuck Birch was the first guy to give him a chance at a head coaching job after being an assistant for a long time. And just to see where Holtmann's career has gone Like that first stepping stone was Gardner Webb. So it's just it was an awesome story to do. Holtman was really open about it on today's media availability. I really hate asking questions for stories during media availability. I'd rather do those one-on-one, but because you don't necessarily get the same openness, but Holtman was great. And I love how Holtman was like, yeah, it wasn't really a coincidence that Gardner Webb ended up on the schedule, as life kind of comes a little bit full circle for him as DePaul hosts Gardner Webb, who is still looking for their first win, as they have losses to Minnesota, Clemson, North Greenville, and Elon. And I'm going to say this, and I understand that DePaul fans may not like this, but this has to be a get-right game. This has to be a 30-point game. Like, this is a game that DePaul just needs to, from the jump, say, we are better than you, and go out there and, 30 bomb them. And I understand there's the emotional tie. You don't necessarily want to do that. But DePaul really needs that game. They need it more than they probably realize, just to see the fruits of their labor.
For sure. No, I think there's really three guys you want to key in on tomorrow. One of them is a lights out freshman. The other two are named Jacob. So I'll kind of tell you about those three guys right now, and just kind of an idea of if this team is going to keep it within shouting distance, these three guys are probably going to be a big part of that. So first of all, you've got a freshman from Alabama. His name is Spence Sims, and he's only averaging 8 points a game on the season, but he is shooting 47.4% from three on 5 attempts a game. So if this team wants to key in on his three-point defense and say, okay, we're able to defend a bit better from the perimeter, he's one guy you'd like to hold to low efficiency tomorrow, because he'll run and gun, and more often than not, he's pretty accurate from three. About half of them go in. And then as for the Jacobs, both of them average over 7 boards a game. One of them a 6'9" forward, the other a 6'2" guard. And Jacob Hudson, a 6'2" guard, is averaging 15 points a game, best on the team, 7.3 rebounds a game, and also 2 steals a game. So if there's going to be a bit of pressing tomorrow, I would imagine he'll be one of the guys doing it. And Jacob Hogarth, meanwhile, 6'9" sophomore, 9 points a game, team best 7.5 boards a game, and he is shooting 83.3% from the free throw line on 3 attempts a game. So doesn't get there often, but more often than not, he's also going to connect. So those 3 guys, I think, are going to be the main reason why this team could potentially keep it within 30 or so points. But I'm going to be honest with you, the more I look into this team, you respect every opponent, and I'm sure DePaul is going to, especially after how Stonehill and Buffalo went. But sure. I really don't see how this team, whether you look at their free throw shooting or their 3-point shooting, both of which are just slightly below DePaul, I just don't see how this team is really, unless DePaul lays an absolute egg on the offensive end, I just don't see how this game is within any less than 20 points for DePaul.
Yeah, and I think we'll notice it early, just given in a physicality sense, because as you mentioned with Hudson and with Hogarth, their rebounding percentages are pretty good. Hogarth 26th in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage at 30%, and about 58% of the running Bulldogs minutes. And again, this is something where you need to out rebound them. But I just think offensively, you need to become this. This is the type of game where you need to be a perimeter threat offensively. They're the 287th team in the country. There's 365. Yeah. So they're a bottom 100 team in 3-point percentage. They're just a bottom, 15 team in 2-point percentage. Offensively, you're not going to have issues. Defensively, you just need to rise to the occasion. And I know that seems weird with an opponent of Gardner Webb, but just given how the last, week to 10 days have gone for DePaul, you just need, lockdown defense, and you just need an offensive onslaught. And I think this is the kind of game that could really do it, because, I hate saying this because it sounds really tone deaf, but you just need to be able to beat a team that doesn't really do anything well. Again, I think Gardner Webb is a good program. They've done some good things in their history. But I just think, if you're DePaul, you can't play down to your competition in this game. You just need to come out, put the game away early, keep your foot on the gas, be done in less than 2 hours, and on your way to Detroit Mercy you go.
For sure. And I think the one thing in this game that I am going to be very interested in, because, like we mentioned with 2 Jacobs, one of them is a 6'2" guard, like we said. And I think the one thing that, Gardner Webb has an advantage here is, so obviously he grabs 7 boards a game, and I'm about to name 5 guards for you who played against Northwestern. Kruz McClure, Brandon Macklin, Layden Blocker, CJ Gunn, RJ Smith. How many rebounds, without looking at the box score, do you think those 5 guys combined for against Northwestern? I've got it in front of me. Don't look at the box score. I know you want to.
No, I'm not. I deleted that tab. I'm just on KenPom now.
The team grabbed 34 boards. How many do you think belong to those 5 in total?
5?
Okay, you guessed a little lower. They grabbed 9 combined. Now, obviously, you're not looking to your guards to rebound. I know you've got Fabian, you've got NJ, you've got guys out there who are expected to get rebounds. But, when you've got a guard getting 7 boards a game for Gardner Webb, if some of those become offensive and your guards are kind of caught, not being as physical and not with their hand in the cookie jar as much, that could be an advantage that Gardner Webb may have, where offensively their guards may be able to grab some possessions back. And then, you've got, Jacob Hogarth is shooting pretty well from the field. You've got Jacob Hudson, who's obviously, he's scoring enough on volume where he's going to be able to make some shots every so often. Like, if this team can get possessions back from their guard room, that's going to be one thing too. But I think DePaul really needs to rise to the challenge, where Chris Holtman challenges his entire team to rebound. I think tomorrow, part of the brunt of that falls on your guards a bit more than it typically does because of a strength of Jacob Hudson.
Well, and I think that's an excellent point, Andy, because I think you look at it, and in a game like this, and I'm just going to tell you what KenPom says. KenPom's projected record for Gardner Webb is 8-23. When you have an opponent like this, I see this a lot in baseball because baseball has a little bit more randomness to it, but we see it in college athletics all the time as well. You think you can be more aggressive because of the skill gap between your opponent and the team that you have. And you see that, and then you start to make uncharacteristic mistakes. Like you said, again, getting caught in the cookie jar. And it's just like one of those weird things. There's no rhyme or reason for it. You think on paper it should be one thing, but the game ain't played on paper. And it's just one of those things where you look at it and it's like, you don't want to be overly aggressive. You don't want to try to do too much or think you are better than them, just because that's when a Buffalo game happens. I'm not saying DePaul was underestimating their opponent by any means, but I just think in the very general sense that, when you see an opponent like this, it's very easy to play down to your competition because your ego keeps going up. Your ego can't go up in a game like this because that's how a bad loss happens, or a poor film session or sessions can be after a game like this.
Just say Stonehill. Just say, I know you want to just say Stonehill. But
I
don't
know
I think
that,
obviously,
so
I think we are running a little bit over. We do eventually want to get these shows down to closer to half an hour, but there's just a lot to talk about today between, the Northwestern game and Nick's story. But I do real quick want to talk about the women today, because they did play an 11:30 a.m. tip, which for both of us who work, it's kind of difficult to be there. But we were watching the
game. Their schedule
is,
we were talking about it off air. Like, their schedule is kind of all over the place.
Yeah, there's multiple, tips before noon on weekdays. There's some games on Friday that cut a bit close. But anyway, today they played a good game. It was 79-72 Northwestern final score. They host the crosstown rival, once again go down. But, they were down 19 points at the end of the third quarter. And with about 4 minutes to go, they had it within 4. And I think it speaks to the fight of this team when you're down by 19 and you're able to rally, still missing Shakara McCline and Meg Newman and Kate Clark. Devin Hegman did play today and made a couple baskets for the first time as a Blue Demon. I've got the box score right in front of me. You had, Natalia Nelson again, 16 points, 9 boards. You had Kate Novick, who I think has been the best player on the team so far. And there's been a lot of good moments, 18 points, 9 boards, 5 assists, 2 steals, 1 block. But I think one of the players I'm most impressed with, if I'm honest, is Justice Odom, who's been providing a real spark off the bench. She had 4 points today, two blocks, and 1 assist in 11 minutes. I think you're starting to see the roles flesh out a lot more, and you're starting to see, girls kind of fit into their place on the team. And, you're able to just kind of plug and play a girl like Devin, who doesn't have to come in with much of a weight on her shoulders. And even still, she had 6 points, 4 assists, 2 steals. I think this is starting to look more and more like a team, even though the record doesn't reflect it, because obviously they're 1-3 with losses now to UNLV, at Bradley, home Northwestern. But I think this team is feeling more and more complete by the day, to a point where once Meg and Kate come back, excuse me, it's going to be a much more complete unit than I think Pizzotti ever hoped she could have had.
Right. And because I, had to work today, I didn't have an opportunity to catch up on the highlights or watch any of the game live. But I think as I just kind of comb over this box score a little bit, what's interesting to me is DePaul outscored Northwestern in quarters 2, 3, and 4 combined. Like, their point differential was a +7. It was just the first quarter where Northwestern put up 29 and DePaul only put up 15. It was just a slow start for DePaul, and where nothing was going right offensively. And I mean, when you shoot 4 of 24 from 3, again, that's a lot of empty possessions in a game that has to be better going forward. But I think the competitive fight and spirit is not something I worried about with a Jill Pizzotti-led team, knowing her the couple years I've known her. It's just one of those weird, fascinating things where it's like, you don't have your best players, you're still competitive, so what do you do when your best players come back? That'll be an interesting balance as we kind of get closer to Big East play and the back half of the non-con.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's important from that game is, for once that they weren't hosting UConn and they still had a big crowd. They got over 9,500 people inside Wintrust today for a program record in attendance. I believe the final number was, I want to get this right, I believe it was 9,526. Let me confirm that real quick. It's in front of me. Yeah, they got 9,526. I was correct, for a program record in attendance. And, it was field trip day. So you had kids when Northwestern got to 67, when DePaul got there, you had the whole 6-7 thing being shouted by kids all across the arena wearing multicolored neon shirts.
Can we stop?
That's one of the things the kids get into these days. You've referenced previously, you've referenced 6-7, you've referenced Aura. So you're a kid at heart. Let me just have my moment here, all right? But I think Northwestern and DePaul, they played a good game today, a hard fought game, and I just think this is the kind of game you're going to look back on as Joe Pizzotti and say, the record may not be there yet because of some of the injuries you have, but the fight is there. And so when you add your 2 star players back, and there's some stars already in Nataya and Kate Novick, but this team already has really good pieces. When you add your 2 stars back, there's going to be a formidable lineup on the team for the DePaul Blue Demons. And that's just an exciting thing to, be covering now, and then kind of when it all comes full circle to kind of see the fruits of the labor play out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in attendance record, again, you have field trip day, you have a bunch of local grade schools coming out, providing great energy. I was at the field trip day last year. I believe it was the home opener against Mercyhurst.
That sounds right.
If I remember correctly. And it was just a great environment to be around. Again, nothing can really create energy like a bunch of, grade school kids who are jumping up and down. They don't really know what's happening. They're just happy to be somewhere that's not school, for the most part. But, it's just a really cool thing that DePaul athletics and women's basketball does every year. And it's just a really, really cool thing to watch, and then to set an attendance record as well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think that's going to wrap us up for today. Nick, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow night to watch some Gardner Webb basketball and see Chris Holtmann hopefully go 2-0 in those games. And
all right, real quick. Does Holt stay in the suit? Does the suit stay on for Holt tomorrow? Or tonight, whenever you're watching this?
I'm going to be honest. You're kind of catching me off guard here for the first time all show. I'm not sure, because I wasn't convinced we'd see it come back again after the Buffalo game. And yet, Northwestern, he comes out with a bright blue suit. I'm not sure. He might go to the 9s tomorrow because of Gardner Webb. I'm not sure. That's the toughest question you've asked me all show. Is Chris Holtmann going to be in a suit tomorrow night?
You know what? I do what I can to keep it entertaining. We thank you for listening to this episode of the DePod. Make sure to follow us on Twitter. He's at Andy Thompson 610. I am at Nick Palazzola 5. You can follow the DePod on Twitter at the DePod. We thank you for listening to today's episode. Make sure to like, subscribe, repost, reshare, all that great stuff. And thank you for listening. So long, everybody.